My work with teachers has been ongoing over the last 25 years. As a teacher leader, as a teacher educator, etc. And what I usually find is that great teachers require support with the idea of planning. Like, the whole idea of lesson design, rather than lesson planning, lesson design, and how the planning or design of your lesson really impacts and inspires students to want to learn. And so there are sort of these hidden secrets that I see work every time in classrooms. And so I chose to write this book about the 6 steps to inspiring meaningful learning through lesson design. I work with a lot of new and experienced teachers who sort of like, help me, like, how can I make this better? And we almost always end up back to lesson design. And so we kind of look at what you're doing already, and we pull it together, and we create like a template together of how to plan a lesson, because teachers sometimes feel like, I've been doing this a long time, I don't really need to plan anymore, I can do it without planning. And I, as a teacher, as I said, of 25 years, am unable to do my work without planning at any level. So to create something easy, number one, so because teachers spend a lot of time planning and organizing and assessing and evaluating. There's a template in the book that supports as much simplicity as possible when you have a lot to do during a lesson. One of the basics of the book was the whole idea of like, what makes an excellent teacher? And over my years, what I've noticed, well, I studied Lee Shulman. Lee Shulman was the one who developed pedagogical content knowledge. So sort of saying like there's a very unique kind of knowledge that only teachers have, and it's sort of a Venn diagram of content and pedagogy, which comes together as pedagogical content knowledge. You have to know a lot, and you have to know how to teach it in order for students to learn. And me and a colleague and myself had worked really over years to sort of say, yeah, content knowledge is really, really important, and having a toolkit of instructional strategies makes a huge impact on inspiring meaningful learning. But rapport is the missing piece of that Venn diagram. So if students understand you, trust you, if they know you care about them, if they come into class knowing that you notice them, suddenly knowing a lot and knowing how to instruct changes the whole classroom, because you have rapport. And so I added this third circle of rapport as one of the most important things, along with content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge, to inspire students to want to learn. Right. So that's sort of the framework of the lesson design. Because without that in all areas, students are not inspired in the same way. So for example, the lesson design starts with welcoming students into learning, making eye contact. It's probably not well known that often no one looks a student in the eye the entire day, because they line up outside, they come into classroom, they get their stuff ready, the whole class lesson begins, and there's no personal contact. It's move into this group, move into that group, get ready for recess, etc. So it's all, the first part is like different ways of making sure that students feel welcome when they enter that classroom, as the first part of designing an impactful lesson. What I have is, I tried to create a template that teachers can use and sort of follow along as they design their lessons. Either choose, so there's some parts where they can choose what to do, and other parts where it sort of says like, do these steps. And where the choice comes in, and even where the steps come in, then the book, or the chapter of the book goes on to explain 10 different ways that you could do this, whatever matches your style, so different ways of welcoming students in, or getting your class to feel like a community, your role in that, the students' role in that, giving students ownership in the classroom, how to speak to the students, those kinds of things. At the beginning, take the template, read the areas of the template, like the book and the areas of the template that speak to you, and start to try bit by bit. There are 6 steps in the template design, and sort of say like, what part of my lesson is troubling me, or where do I feel like I need a little bit more information? Is it when they first walk in? Is it during the guided or independent practice portion? Do I need some support maybe with learning to close a lesson? How are my checks for understanding during a lesson? Am I giving ownership to kids? Am I the sage on the stage, or am I the guide on the side? So it's sort of like, where are you as a teacher, new or experienced, and where do you think your next steps are? And the book is broken down in such a way that you can find the area that you want to look more into, and then get just a lot of tried and true ideas, but very, very practical ideas about what to try next and see if it works. So I think teacher self-awareness is a crucial piece of what educators need to have in order to be successful in this profession today. We need to step back and sort of say, how did we do? How do we feel? What's triggering us? What calms us? And in fact, there's a portion in the book that talks about how the teacher creates the heartbeat of the classroom. If when the kids come in the morning, the teacher has done a few deep breaths and a little bit of mindfulness, and then encourages the children to stop for a moment, to breathe, to talk in a community about how they're feeling before they start, to call each other by name, to sit in a comfortable way, we can inspire kids to feel like this classroom belongs to them. Well, that takes a lot of self-awareness, because in the morning a lot of teachers are running around and photocopying and talking to colleagues and getting organized, and oh, I have a meeting later and everything. But taking those moments to stop, to breathe, to become self-aware, and to teach your students to do the same are really important. That is a part of what's in this book. I'm really, really excited to give teachers, excellent teachers, experienced teachers, and even new teachers the opportunity to have a way to self-reflect. To, instead of feeling like I'm at the end of my rope or I just don't know what to do, to be able to pick up the book and go to chapter 3 and sort of say, input and modeling. I'm feeling uncomfortable with this area of the lesson right now. I seem to be skipping it all the time to go straight to independent practice. You know, I welcome them in, I tell them the learning goals and success criteria, and then I give them the activity. I'm missing something here. And so to be able to sort of look at a lesson, to reflect on what's going well and where you need a little support, to flip to that area of the book, and to just get a whole bunch of ideas about how the theory works in practice and what to try. So I'm really excited to offer that to teachers. You know, the whole welcoming in and making students feel like they are part of their own classroom community has been an evolving thing for me. I always felt that I had a good relationship with kids, but I think that that was sort of just my own intuition, and sort of understanding how to build rapport, how students react to having their name called in a positive way, what kinds of default communication we do with kids that really doesn't support them to feel comfortable in a classroom, how to dialogue rather than to talk at students. All of those things I've been noticing a lot more in my interactions with students and teachers. And I have this one little vignette in the book where I write about working in a grade 3 classroom. I was a teacher at the time, I was a support teacher, and a student walked in about 15 minutes late, and the teacher was right in the middle of the lesson. And this kid was late a lot, and he had his head down. And typically what I would have expected was her to turn to him, not her, but a teacher, turn to him and say, oh, did you sign in? You know, you've been late, this is your 3rd time this week, like in front of the class. And she turned to him and she said, we are so happy you're here, that you've come to join us in class today. Go get your stuff and join in. We can catch up really quickly. And he just lifted his head. He went straight to get his things, and he had a smile on his face. And I realized, like, that moment where you make the decision to either make a kid feel valued and welcomed, or you make a kid feel, you know, scared, uncomfortable, and ashamed, that's up to the teacher. Those kinds of experiences are interwoven throughout the book, because I talk in every section about content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and rapport, and sort of how throughout the day. So instead of going over to a student who's working during independent time and saying, are you done? You've been working on that for a long time. You've been working on that for 15 minutes. It's supposed to be a 5-minute activity. Could you hurry up? Instead of that, saying, you got number 1 right. You're on your way. I think another few minutes and you probably can get number 2 done also. Good job. And then, so you look for the positive, you comment on that first, and then you move the child along. So I think our intuition sometimes has us commenting on the negative first. But over the years of learning and watching teachers, thousands of teachers from all over the, new teachers, experienced teachers, it just makes such a big difference. And it's not so hard if you have the toolkit. I think it's a useful tool for all teachers to have on their bookshelf, this book. Like, I call it a tool because it's actually functional. So I have probably 1,000 teaching books in my library, and I use them all the time. Like, it's not the same as Googling, instructional strategies, or behavior management, or independent practice. It's not the same. When you buy a Pembroke book, or when you buy a book from an author who has spent the time to set it up in a way that teachers can use practically, I think that it's worthwhile for teachers to have their own professional library of books like these. Pembroke has so many great books, and I own so many of them, to keep going back to, because even if you've got something for a while, you may not have it with a particular class, and you kind of have to go back and reflect again. So I think these books are important to own, and I even tell my students at OISE UT where I teach, and I've taught for many years, say we study something like guided instruction, and I say, keep the stuff we've done, keep the examples, keep the articles, because when you go to do guided instruction, Googling it is not going to get you what we've done here. And so this is what these kinds of books, my book, provides for teachers.